I'm Marcy England. I'm from Corona Norco Adult School. Thanks so much, Lori, for having me here today. I'm excited to share what we're doing and my background. I'm the ESL program coordinator at our school. I also coordinate the EL Civics portion of the ESL program, of course, and then I'm also the technology team lead at our school. So our school does have a tech team, which really helped with our remote testing. So I guess I'll get started. First, the overview I wanted to share. I really thought about what are we doing at our school that can be helpful for you, and I thought that there are several tips and tricks that I can share, and I'll kind of pepper those in. But I thought about me as a learner, and I really learn from seeing like a case study or seeing what people are doing in action. So that's really, I'm just going to kind of take you through my process, and hopefully there will be bits and pieces that you can pull out and work on in your school. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. We're going to talk about what I did to get started. And when I say I mean we, because we're a team at my school, and we really all work together with the ESL program, all working together on this. So there's getting started, then creating the assessment, the test administration, and how we deliver that equitably, and then maximizing learner outcomes, and then really quick at the very end, just finding support and jumping in. So first of all, getting started. The first thing that we really needed to do was review all the resources and instruction provided by CASAS for California remote testing. And the first thing you really have to do is know what you're dealing with and understand the system and what the new parameters are. And then if you have questions, reach out to your program specialist or reach out to anyone that can help you at CASAS that can help you figure that out. Then next, what I did after I reviewed those resources is I wrote them in, I kind of rewrote them or in a simplified version to share out with our teams. Something everybody needs, like an at a glance kind of resource. So I kind of simplified it and rewrote it for our team. The next thing for getting started is determine the testing team and then train and familiarize them with the process, and then take inventory of what your school has. So if your students have laptops, then you know that that's going to be an asset. Or if your students are familiar with a certain platform, then that's going to be an asset. So you really have to look at who you have that's an asset, like what are all the resources at your school, and really look for teachers or people that are eager to learn and want to help and assist in this. So really taking an inventory. After that, you really need to identify what COAAPs to teach. So for me, when I look through these COAAPs, I look at the needs assessment from the students, and then I look at what is it doable. And so I really look and say, okay, I know these resources. Now I look through every single task. Now I copied these from, I think these are 47.1 or 47.2. And I would look and say, okay, it says student will label or describe orally and writing 6 pictures. And I would really look at that and try and visualize like what would that look like in a remote setting based on what I've already learned and understood from the guidelines. And then I do that again for all the tasks and make sure, okay, is this doable? It says write about internet safety. And then right here it says optimally, the writing will be created on a computer and sent to the assessor electronically. So then I think, do our students know how to do that? Do they know how to communicate and send things electronically? So that's really where I start as far as identifying which COAAPs we're going to do. So then the next step is creating the assessment for me. So we use backwards mapping. We utilize platforms and tools that the students already know and understand and that teachers are familiar with. We follow the assessment plan tasks with this innovative mindset. And then we have to be really mindful of assessing for literacy objectives, not digital literacy. And that's something I've had to hit really hard, is making sure we want to make sure we're not testing students' ability to use Google Forms or ability to use Flipgrid or whatever platform we're using or however that's being done. We want to make sure that we're assessing their knowledge of the objective. And so the understanding of the platform has to take place well before you get to that. So here's the details. So I use backwards mapping to create the assessment and the resources. And this is something we already do, right? Even like in a face-to-face, but I go through it in more of a digital format, and I create just a plan that's going to be shared out with the team. And then I create the score sheets and make sure that everything is shareable and in a digital version. And this just really helps so that we're all on the same page. And sometimes reading the objectives and the tasks that look like this gets a little bit daunting for everyone on the team. Okay, so then the next step is I utilize platforms and tools that they're already using. So for us, that's been Google Forms. We started our assessments in the summer. We did 48.1 and 47.2, and we started with a version of the students write in their notebook the answers and show it to the screen, and then teachers would take a screenshot, and they would do that in very small cohorts. For me, from a administrative side, it was a nightmare. I'm not organized enough, and I didn't have the tools and what I needed to store all that information and keep track of it. And I found myself wanting to print out all the papers and label them. And it just, I knew that from that trial that it wasn't working, that we needed to find something different. And that's where the Google Forms came in for us. So here's just an example of what this would look like utilizing the platform. Right here we have task 2. It says the student will list 5 things parents can do to keep children or to help their children be successful learners. Okay, so they would fill out the form just as usual with their name and their teacher. And then really they're going to list 5 things. It's very basic. And then for beginning low, it was using a picture prompt. So it would look something like this. Now, the part I could never get past, because this process isn't new. People were using this before we went to distance learning. But what I couldn't get past is, where does all the data go? How does that? I'm used to collecting papers from teachers. Where does it all go? And it was a very confusing process for me. But I knew that what we were doing wasn't working. So I just jumped in. So if any of you are where I was at that point, I wanted to show you what it looks like. So on the form, we have the questions. You can click on responses, and then it will populate an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, which can be downloaded to Excel if you're more comfortable with that. And so when you click on this sheet, it automatically shows you all the students that took the assessment, and then you just sort by teacher. And then I go through question by question and score the assessment. And then I can add the speaking score in here and add the total score. So it's actually taken my assessing and the administrative side of scoring, and that part has gotten so much easier because I'm no longer shuffling papers and everything is right here for me. So that was an added plus that I didn't expect, and I was scared to try and figure out what if I lose all the data, or what if I can't find it. But it populates so beautifully as long as each of the assessments is sorted by teacher. So you give students the option there by teacher. And so then the actual assessment and equity. So you want to be prepared during the assessing that you're available for questions and support, and understanding that everybody's nervous about this. Everybody is afraid they're going to make mistakes, and trying to get students and staff out of that mindset. Like, it's okay. If we mess up, that's okay. We can reassess, or we can do this, or we can do it orally. A lot of the assessments say written or orally. And so you can change things if you need to a bit. You can adjust. This is a growing period for us. So that's one really cool thing. To have that mindset of like, I'm going to grow and I'm going to make mistakes, but that's okay, because that's how we're going to learn to be better. So you have to identify who's available for help. So I like this image that I put on the slide, because that text, one is the teacher, here's the teacher that's assessing, and here's the assessor, and here is the support right there, like this student's having trouble. And so being available to hop on at any time and having that support really gives people the freedom to feel more comfortable with it. Plan for problems, they will happen. And then share the results link so that assessors can view the test completion live. So if you share the link to this, and you can share it as a view only, then the assessor can see exactly which students have finished the assessment. So that's really cool that you can see those live results. Just practice. You can also, another good thing is to start small and start with 1 or 2 classes and then try it out. There's always a teacher that's willing to look at everything and test early and see how, and then with the opportunity of maybe changing or adjusting if needed. There's teachers that are willing to do that. So look for those and have those teachers in your wheelhouse. So addressing equity in the assessments. We need to recognize that students might be on small screens and text needs to be really large. It needs to be clear, nothing fancy. Keep everything minimal, simple, and understand that people are viewing this in different ways. So some students also might need the paper option, and we need to make sure that we make that available. If that's what they need, then we send them a paper version and they can print it and watch. A teacher can watch them do that. And then listen for teachers to prepare for student needs. So really talk to your teachers and find out who's going to need what. Okay, and then just to wrap up, maximizing learner outcomes. So there are a lot of great resources that are already out there for you. So on the CASAS website are some fabulous resources from OTAN where you can get help with the assessment, like increasing digital literacy is part of this key to successful assessments. Because remember, we're not testing for digital literacy unless that's your objective, but all the other objectives are testing nutrition or skills. So we got to make sure we get past that. We teach that first. I love this last resource from OTAN where it's really cool ways to help identify if the assessment says create a list and it says what technology tools can help you do that in the assessment. And all the links are here on my slides there at the bottom, and I'll just put this presentation can be available for whoever wants it. And then again, more resources. Check those out. Look at all the resources provided by OTAN and CASAS. And then lastly, to maximize learner outcomes, make sure that I mentioned this before, but make sure that the assessment method is familiar. And so this PLC exit ticket that you see here, I threw that into our last PLC because I wanted teachers to understand you can be using Google Forms and should be using Google Forms all throughout your lessons. Use it as an exit ticket, use it here, use it there, so that when they do get an assessment that looks like this, they're familiar with the process. And maybe if emailing is something that students are going to do, if they're email something, and make sure they know how to do that and that they're familiar with that. And then lastly, make sure that most of your synchronous learning is focusing on civics and have that available for your students. Okay, so then my very last slide, how do you find support and how do you jump in? So again, like I said, embrace failure. It takes that idea of making mistakes to figure out what's not working, so then you can determine what is going to work for you. Staff training and development it's a team effort. Create a team, look for the innovators at your school, and accept feedback. Have teachers look at it and say, what do you think? What would your students think or do? Have people try it out. I even had my husband, when I was trying the very first time, I had my husband try it out. Like, what do you think? I'm not going to give you any extra instructions, just try it, see how it works. So test it out, and then think about longevity systems. We're not creating band-aids. We are creating systems, and they're innovative systems for the future. And so when we have that longevity in the way we think about testing, we really create better systems, I think. So anyway, that's a lot, but that's it in a nutshell, what we've been doing.